Every file has a story. Some were never meant to be found. November 24th, 1971. It was the day before Thanksgiving. Inside Portland International Airport, thousands of travelers hurried through the terminal, eager to reach their families before the holiday. Businessmen checked their watches. Children pressed their faces against the windows to watch airplanes taxi across the runway. Flight attendants welcomed passengers with familiar smiles. For everyone inside the airport, it was just another ordinary afternoon. No one noticed the man in the dark business suit. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't in a hurry. He didn't attract attention. He looked exactly like every other businessman traveling home for the holidays. He carried a black briefcase, bought a one-way ticket with cash, and signed a name that would soon become one of the most famous aliases in American history: Dan Cooper. Within a few hours, the world would know him by another name, D.B. Cooper. He quietly boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305, seat 18C, near the rear of the aircraft. After takeoff, he ordered a bourbon and soda, lit a cigarette, and calmly watched the clouds drift past his window. Nothing about his behavior suggested that history was about to change. A few minutes later, he folded a small piece of paper, then handed it to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. She smiled politely, assuming it was another businessman trying to flirt. Without reading it, she slipped the note into her handbag. Cooper leaned slightly toward her. His voice remained calm. "You'd better read that note." She unfolded the paper. Only one sentence was written: "I have a bomb." For a brief moment, everything stopped. Florence looked up slowly. She expected to see panic. Instead, she saw a man who looked completely relaxed. His expression never changed. Cooper quietly opened his briefcase just enough for her to look inside. She later told investigators that she saw several red cylinders, wires, and what appeared to be a battery. Whether it was a real bomb has never been confirmed. But in that moment, it didn't matter. She believed him. The captain was informed immediately. Without alarming the passengers, the message reached the cockpit. Within minutes, airline executives, local police, and the FBI were secretly coordinating a response on the ground. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, no one suspected a thing. Passengers continued reading newspapers. Some chatted with the person beside them. Others stared out the windows, watching the forests of the Pacific Northwest disappear beneath thick clouds. The flight attendants continued serving drinks. The aircraft felt perfectly normal. Only a handful of people knew that Flight 305 had just become the center of an unfolding hijacking. Cooper's demands were surprisingly simple. He wanted $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting when the aircraft landed in Seattle. There were no dramatic speeches, no shouting, no threats toward the passengers, no reckless behavior. He remained polite, calm, patient, almost as if he had rehearsed every second of what was about to happen. Authorities faced an impossible decision. Was the bomb real, or was it a bluff? No one was willing to gamble with the lives of 36 passengers and crew. The ransom was approved. While the aircraft circled above Seattle, FBI agents hurried to collect the money. 10,000 $20 bills. Every single bill was photographed, every serial number carefully recorded. Investigators believed those serial numbers would eventually lead them to the hijacker. They had no idea those numbers would become one of the few clues the case would ever produce. Nearly 2 hours after takeoff, Flight 305 finally landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The runway had been cleared. Police vehicles remained hidden in the distance. The airport lights reflected across the wet pavement. Outside, employees carefully delivered the cash and 4 parachutes exactly as Cooper had demanded. Everything went according to his plan. One by one, the passengers were released. They stepped onto the runway believing the nightmare had ended. Most never even realized they had been sitting beside one of the most mysterious criminals in American history. But for the remaining crew, the real mystery was only beginning. Only 4 people remained on board: the captain, the first officer, the flight engineer, and flight attendant Tina Mucklow. Cooper calmly picked up the bag containing the ransom money. Then he gave the pilots a new set of instructions. He wanted the aircraft back in the air. Its final destination would be Mexico City. But first, the plane would need to refuel in Reno, Nevada. His demands became even more unusual. The aircraft had to remain below 10,000 feet. Its speed could not exceed approximately 200 knots. The wing flaps had to stay partially extended. The landing gear would remain lowered during takeoff. And then came the request that stunned the flight crew. He wanted the rear staircase unlocked. The Boeing 727 was one of the few commercial aircraft in the world equipped with a built-in stairway beneath its tail. It could be lowered while the airplane was still flying. Very few passengers even knew it existed. Yet Cooper did. That single request convinced many investigators that this was no ordinary hijacker. He understood the aircraft. He knew exactly what he planned to do. At 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 lifted off once again. The passengers were gone. Only the crew and Cooper remained. Outside the windows, darkness covered the Pacific Northwest. Rain lashed against the fuselage. Powerful winds shook the aircraft. Below them stretched hundreds of miles of dense forests, steep mountains, and freezing rivers. It was one of the worst nights imaginable to jump from an airplane. Yet Cooper appeared completely untroubled. He examined the parachutes. He tied the bag of ransom money securely to his body using parachute cords. Then he turned to Tina Mucklow. "You can go to the cockpit now." She hesitated for a moment. Before closing the cockpit door, she glanced back one final time. Cooper was standing alone near the rear of the cabin, calm, silent, almost expressionless. Those were the last moments anyone would ever see him. A few minutes later, inside the cockpit, a warning light suddenly illuminated. The indicator showed that the rear staircase had been lowered. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Then, at approximately 8:13 p.m., the aircraft lurched violently. It briefly pitched upward before settling back into level flight. The pilots immediately recognized what had happened. Something, or someone, had just left the airplane. They continued flying toward Reno exactly as instructed. No one dared leave the cockpit. No one knew whether Cooper was still on board. When the aircraft finally landed, FBI agents, local police, and armed officers surrounded the plane within seconds. They rushed inside. Every row was searched, every compartment examined, every inch of the aircraft inspected. The briefcase was gone. The parachutes were gone. The ransom money was gone. And so was D.B. Cooper. A man had boarded Flight 305. No one had seen him leave. No body was found. No parachute was recovered. No witness watched him land. Somewhere, in the darkness below, one of history's greatest mysteries had just begun. The FBI launched what became one of the largest investigations in its history. Agents searched forests, rivers, mountain valleys. They questioned hunters, fishermen, truck drivers, and anyone who might have seen a parachute drifting through the night. Military helicopters flew over dense woodlands. Ground teams walked mile after mile through thick undergrowth. Nothing. No body. No parachute. No briefcase. Not even a single footprint that could be linked to Cooper. It was as if he had simply disappeared. Investigators correctly realized they were dealing with someone unlike any hijacker they had encountered before. He had remained calm throughout the entire flight. He never harmed a passenger. He never raised his voice. He appeared familiar with aviation procedures. Most importantly, he knew something almost no ordinary traveler knew. The Boeing 727's rear staircase could be lowered during flight. At the time, that feature was unique. Many investigators believed Cooper had specifically chosen the aircraft because of it. But another question soon divided the experts. Could anyone have survived that jump? The conditions were almost impossible. It was night. Heavy rain reduced visibility to almost zero. Temperatures outside the aircraft were near freezing. Wind speeds exceeded 100 miles per hour. Below lay dense forests, rivers, rocky hillsides, and miles of wilderness. Many experienced parachutists believed the jump was suicidal. Others strongly disagreed. Former military jump instructors pointed out that survival was difficult, but not impossible. If Cooper had extensive parachute training, if he understood the weather, if he knew the terrain, he might have landed safely. And if someone had been waiting on the ground, his escape could have been carefully planned long before Flight 305 ever left Portland. Years passed. The case slowly grew colder. Suspects came and went. Each new lead ended the same way, without proof. Then, nearly 9 years after the hijacking, everything changed. On February 10th, 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was vacationing with his family along the Columbia River. While digging in the sand, he uncovered 3 decaying bundles of $20 bills. The money was badly damaged, but the serial numbers were still readable. When the FBI checked the records, every single bill matched the ransom money handed to D.B. Cooper in 1971. At last, investigators had discovered physical evidence. But instead of answering the mystery, it created an even bigger one. How had the money ended up buried beneath layers of riverbank sand? Had Cooper buried it himself? Had floodwaters carried it downstream? Or had someone intentionally placed it there years later? More than 4 decades later, no explanation has ever satisfied every investigator. The money remains one of the most important clues in the entire case, and one of its greatest unanswered questions. By the early 1980s, the D.B. Cooper case had become more than a criminal investigation. It had become a national obsession. New suspects appeared almost every year. Former soldiers, airline employees, professional skydivers, career criminals, even ordinary businessmen who happened to resemble the FBI sketch. More than 800 people were investigated. Some confessed, some were accused by family members, others attracted attention because of mysterious pasts or military experience. Yet every promising lead eventually collapsed under closer examination. No one could be conclusively identified as D.B. Cooper. Among the most discussed suspects was Richard Floyd McCoy. Like Cooper, he hijacked a Boeing 727 months later and escaped by parachute. His methods were strikingly similar. Many believed the cases had to be connected. But investigators discovered important differences. Witnesses who had seen Cooper insisted McCoy was not the same man. His age, his appearance, even his manner of speaking failed to match the descriptions given by the flight crew. The theory slowly lost support. Another name frequently appeared: Kenneth Christensen, a former paratrooper, an employee of Northwest Orient Airlines. He knew the Boeing 727 well. After his death, some believed his sudden increase in wealth raised questions. But again, there was never enough evidence. Then came Robert Rackstraw, a decorated Vietnam veteran with military parachute training and experience using explosives. His criminal background made him an intriguing suspect. Several independent investigators believed he fit the profile perfectly. Yet, after years of investigation, the FBI publicly stated there was insufficient evidence to connect him to the hijacking. The list continued to grow. Lynn Doyle Cooper, William Gossett, Walter Recker. Dozens of names, hundreds of theories, not one proven beyond doubt. As forensic science advanced, investigators turned to the evidence Cooper had unknowingly left behind: a black clip-on tie. He had removed it before making the jump. For years, it sat inside FBI evidence storage. Eventually, scientists examined it using technology that did not exist in 1971. Microscopic particles were discovered on the fabric, rare metallic elements, tiny industrial materials, fragments invisible to the naked eye. Some researchers suggested Cooper may have worked in the aerospace industry. Others believed he had been employed in advanced manufacturing. Interesting possibilities, but nothing conclusive. DNA testing offered hope as well. Unfortunately, the genetic material recovered from the tie was incomplete. There was no reliable sample to compare against living suspects. Once again, the investigation reached another dead end. More than 40 years after the hijacking, one simple question remained unanswered. Who was D.B. Cooper? In July 2016, after 45 years of investigation, the FBI officially announced that it was suspending active investigation into the D.B. Cooper case. The decision surprised many people, not because the mystery had been solved, but because every significant lead had eventually reached the same conclusion. There simply wasn't enough evidence. The case file remained open in history, even if it had been closed inside FBI headquarters. That announcement did nothing to end public fascination. If anything, it made the mystery even more legendary. Independent investigators continued searching. Journalists revisited forgotten witnesses. Historians reconstructed flight paths. Aviation experts analyzed the aircraft. Meteorologists recreated the weather conditions from that night. Every few years, someone claimed to have solved the case. Every few years, another theory collapsed. Perhaps the most fascinating question has never been about Cooper's identity. It has always been much simpler. Did he survive? If the answer is no, then somewhere beneath the forests of the Pacific Northwest, his remains may still be waiting to be discovered. If the answer is yes, then one man successfully disappeared after committing one of the most daring crimes in American history. He never spent the ransom. He never contacted the media. He never attempted another hijacking. He simply vanished. History rarely gives us mysteries like that. Today, the D.B. Cooper hijacking remains the only unsolved commercial aircraft hijacking in United States history. More than half a century has passed. Technology has transformed the world. Airports are protected by sophisticated security systems. Passengers leave digital footprints everywhere they go. Facial recognition cameras monitor terminals. Identity checks have become routine. A crime like Cooper's would be almost impossible to repeat today. Perhaps that is another reason the story continues to captivate millions. It represents the end of a different era. An era when one ordinary-looking passenger could board an airplane with nothing more than a briefcase and disappear into history. Some believe D.B. Cooper died the night he jumped. Others believe he lived a long and ordinary life under another name. Until undeniable evidence is found, both possibilities remain alive. And perhaps that is exactly how the legend was meant to end. Not with certainty, but with a question that refuses to disappear. Who was D.B. Cooper? And what really happened after he stepped into the darkness?